Well, good morning again, everybody. This is Lynn Gardner calling in from Icy, Virginia. We had another minor snowstorm. I don't know, maybe just 5 or 6 inches close to me. And then that was layered with ice, about a quarter of an inch of ice is what they say. So it's as hard as a rock. You can rock all across the fields and stand on the ice. If you've never seen a sunrise reflecting off the ice, you don't know what you're missing. It's beautiful. But it's going to hit 50 degrees today, and that warmth will soon be melting the ice. You can learn a whole lot about people. I'm sure I've said this before about how they manage life just by the weather. For some, they could hear on the news that there are 3 snowflakes coming, and they rush to the grocery store to buy up everything in sight, as if they'll never make it there again. But even on our worst day, how long are we ever really snowed in Virginia? Not long. Some go to another extreme and they'll crank up the generators and buy outdoor gear and snow blowers and everything as if the end of the world is coming. But how long are any of us ever really without electricity and creature comforts? Some don't care at all. They hit the roads ignoring all the warnings to stay off the ice, and before you know it, there's a 20-car pileup that takes place, and it blocks every emergency vehicle and all the snow removal equipment, but all for the sake of running wherever. But what was so important that couldn't wait for a couple of hours? The mere thought of being stranded causes some people to make ridiculous choices. As for me, I kind of roll with the flow. I'll sometimes look in the freezer just to see if there's anything in there. I make sure to have a little firewood handy just for in case the power does go out. I want to still make coffee, right? And then I just stay put and wait it out. All of these things inspired me to consider this lesson for you today entitled Icy Conditions. If you've ever tried to drive on a road with ice, it's pointless. No matter the vehicle or the all-weather tires you bought, ice is ice and you can't gain traction on it. I've driven in the ice a few times, and there's nothing like having your car just suddenly take control, right? It just floats all over the highway on the ice while you sit there and pray for the best. You may or may not know that when that happens, you don't brake, you don't steer. There's nothing you can do. You can't outmaneuver the ice. So you just sit there and hope for the best, and thank God when you stop sliding without any harm. Some of you know what I'm talking about. It's not rocket science to cope with ice, and there's really no way to rush the process. Eventually, the sun will melt away that layer of ice like it will today. It's going to be about 50 degrees today, and all the salt that was placed on the roads has cleared the way for travel. Dealing with the ice on the ground is one thing, but dealing with the shield of ice surrounding other people in your life is an entirely different story, and it takes an entirely different approach. Understanding each one of us is unique, with a unique shield of ice protection, all somewhere around us, to guard us from making mistakes again, right? Dealing with, understanding that each one of us is going to look at life from a different standpoint, with a different set of fingerprints and life experience and individuality. It's true for relationships. It's true with our children. It's true in the journey of faith, and it's definitely true in business. We'll all experience pain at one level or another, and most of us do add just a little layer of protection around us to help us to avoid that pain again, at least in those certain areas. If we aren't careful, though, that layer gets larger and larger and thicker, and before you know it, we're unapproachable by anybody for anything. As we all work on self-improvement in this journey, one of the things we're doing is we're attempting to melt away the shields of ice that we've surrounded ourselves with for protection. All those things from fear to I can't do this or I can't do that are just words defining your shield. Until you melt the ice shield away, you can't do this or that. The self-improvement journey is a lifelong quest to become all that we were intended to be, the best version of us. And frankly, it never ends because we don't reach perfection on this side of life. But what about all those other people in our lives, personal and professional, with their own little ice shield around them? How do we handle that so that we can reach inside? Unfortunately, most people attempt to remove ice with an ice pick, and that strategy doesn't make any more sense to me going out in the field trying to remove ice off the field, than it does to try to pick away at a human being. We cause a little damage here, a little damage there, and sometimes we might even compromise the conditions, but it's not usually leading to removal of the ice. It's just irreparable damage instead. We see this strategy in relationships all the time. Instead of trying to identify the shield of ice and then melt it with warmth, we start picking away with an ice pick like a shower scene from Psycho. And more often than not, we break the other person down instead of melting the ice. And nothing really gets resolved, all because we opted for an ice pick instead of the warmth. We certainly see it in our children, although we haven't lived long, they haven't lived long enough to, to be completely shielded in ice, thank God. They each have their own unique personalities, individuality, those fingerprints and soul prints. And when we need to get through to them, it's best to leave the ice pick behind. We get to them with warmth of a relationship, and kindness is the best way to melt the ice. It's sure true for our faith. I see it online. I hear it from my Christian friends. People of faith encounter one that's shielded in ice from the truth, if you will. They generally begin using that ice pick to hack away at a belief system. But nobody responds well to attacks, and they only serve to drive others away. The warming of the sun is the only way to melt that kind of ice. And lastly, we see it in our business. Never lose sight of the fact that you're dealing with unique individuals, and each one has a layer of ice, a shield around them, that you need to try to penetrate. Sometimes the layer is a lack of trust layer, and no matter what you say, their guard is up, the shield's around them, they don't believe you. Sometimes the layer is a way to avoid change of any kind because they don't handle change well. They do things the way they do things, they drink what they drink, they eat what they eat, and they don't want to change. Sometimes the layer's up to avoid anything that goes against what they're already doing. They don't want anybody correcting them, right? It doesn't really matter what kind of ice shield it is. It matters that we understand it exists. I see most people in our world using ice picks to reach other people. They'll hack away with science and facts, but all they usually accomplish is a little collateral damage. Nobody reacts well to that being, to being attacked. You probably heard me say it before. But I tell you, when I was first introduced to water, I'm thankful for ignorance, okay? Because I didn't see a demo. Nobody scienced me to death. Nobody was hacking away with an ice pick. I wasn't told you're an idiot for drinking Diet Coke. Nobody was attacking my lifestyle. They just shared the water, didn't know what to tell me, and the rest is history. The only thing anybody ever really reacts to in this life is that warmth that melts the ice. That's what compassion looks like, folks. Compassion never involves an ice pick. In fact, the definition of compassion, if you haven't visited that for a while, means concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. So let's change up a few words for our journey. Spreading true health globally with concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. Just so it really does kind of change things. We spit out the word compassion all the time. But just so we're clear on this, compassion isn't for wussies. I think a lot of times people hear that and they think, well, I don't want to just love on people. And compassion doesn't mean that we lose the focus on running our business, but we're never dealing with people of logic and never going to deal with people that, appreciate an ice pick. We're dealing with people of emotion, all of them with shields of some sort from their pain, all of them with some sort of suffering or misfortune. So we don't deal with them with less or in lightweight style at all. When we extend compassion, we just lose the ice pick, and we surround them with the warmth of compassion that can melt the ice and lead the way to a decision. Sometimes I think we all get too caught up in the show and tell, trying to prove that what we have has the profound ability to change a life, like we can force them into that belief system. And, I weigh most things in my life against my faith. That's first and foremost for me. And I can tell you, as I share my faith, and I do it often, I don't feel that I have to prove anything to change a belief system. I never pull out an ice pick to penetrate their ice. I don't attack them. I don't care where they're coming from. I don't care what kind of person. I'm not attacking them. I don't beat them up with scripture as if I spit out those words are going to roll over and play dead. The most impactful thing I do when I share my faith is I extend warmth and compassion. And if I do it long enough, you know what? It's going to melt that ice. The same is true with your business. They say that fortune is in the follow-up, and you better believe it is in every area of life. Because when you follow up and you extend compassion, you leave the ice pick behind, you begin to melt their ice. And that takes follow-up, folks. People buy into emotion and not into logic. I see all the science and the proof that we insist upon. It's like sharing an ice pick, because the way we deal with people is the same in business and and faith. Some people get it almost immediately, whether you're sharing your business or your faith, it's almost instantly. Some people will expect to be nurtured indefinitely without ever really making a decision at all. Some people laugh right in our face and spit out insults and call us fools. But by the way we deal with each other is all the same, right? We can't control their actions. We can only control ours. If we set out with an arsenal of proof and we pick away at lives and lifestyles like a scene from Psycho, we never really win. Sometimes we might break down the other person and they'll surrender and do what we wanted them to do. But winning is one thing, changing a life is another. Remember, we're in a duplicatable business. So as you share with other people, you bring them on board, you want them to duplicate what you did. Certainly don't want them to duplicate a scene from Psycho. Remember, perception is sometimes all we really have to go on. And although you might feel like your heart is filled with concern over the suffering and misfortunes of others, as long as you're determined to break them down with an ice pick, it doesn't look much like compassion from where they sit. Walking through my faith and the results that I do or don't see is the same as it is for business. Again, I extend compassion. I share the truth. I show concern for their suffering and misfortune. I eventually ask if they want what I have, if I can help them in any way. I love them every step of the way. I sprinkle truth gently here and there that reinforce my words. And if they don't get what I get, I move on. But I continue to drip them. They're never left behind. I never give up hope, whether it's for faith or for this business. I never do. And that's what follow-up looks like. You don't leave them in the dust. Doesn't that sound familiar to you? It's time for some of you to lose that ice pick. Okay, you might have seen some success, but you have no idea the success you can see when you quit trying to pick away at people and trade that in for compassion. You learn to extend compassion, do your part, and move on instead of attempting to chisel away at a belief system like that scene from Psycho. You know, some people are going to get it, and some people aren't going to get it. And all the time you spend with that one person with so much ice around them, you're not penetrating anything. You're taken away from all the other people that need to hear from you. The most compassionate thing you can do sometimes is to plant the seeds and walk away, never leaving them behind. But determined in your belief system that one day they will get it. And when they do, it will be an emotional decision, mostly based on the compassion you extended toward them and not a chiseling away with an ice pick. Concern over the suffering and misfortune of others. Now, I hope you'll ponder that ice pick analogy. Some of you looking at ice today, some of you just gotten through the ice, and I hope that you'll think about it and consider your tactics in dealing with somebody, you know, as you attempt to get them to get what you get. You and I don't do well with an ice pick approach, believe me. So why would anybody else? I don't want you, you know, taking an ice pick in my life, and you don't either. So why would any of these people that we presumably love and want to extend compassion to, why would they deal with it any other way? So you guys will go have a blessed day. I'll see you at the top. I'll definitely see you next week. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.